Okay, here we go. Got to say my 3 S's. Star, smile, strong. 3, 2, 1. This is Elton Jim Turano, and this is Captain Podtastic. And welcome to Elton Jim Turano's Captain Podtastic here at WGN-Plus.com. Thanks for clicking on. Episode 22. Seems like every episode now I think of a number of what it is, and I have a story for that number. And, of course, 22 always reminds me of the great Albert Brooks movie called Lost in America. He and his wife are a couple of baby boomers that are going to leave society. They cash out. They had 2 high-paying jobs. They cash out. They buy a camper, and they're just going to travel the country and just be living free, stopping in their camper and getting away from the rat race. And, of course, they start in Las Vegas, and little does Albert Brooks know, but his wife has a gambling problem. And while he's sleeping, she takes all their money, their nest egg, if you will, and he wakes up in the night, and she's at the roulette table, just staring, going, 22, 22, 22. And she lost pretty much all their money. And her number is 22, 22. And, in fact, the funny thing is the actress who played in that movie, Lost in America, great movie. You've got to, if you don't know Albert Brooks, you need to know Albert Brooks as a movie writer and comedian, and you've got to find Lost in America on Netflix or Redbox or Redfin or whatever, Cincinnati Reds, whatever it is. You'll find that because it's a great movie. But so I was on a vacation one time in Vancouver, and we were staying at this hotel where they make a lot of movies in Vancouver now. And so, and up in Canada, but definitely specifically in Vancouver. And so this, little did I know that the hotel that we're staying at is a hotel that has rooms as well as like long extended stay rooms. And so that's at this hotel. It was a nice hotel. And that's where a lot of the actors and actresses in the movies that they film in Vancouver stay. It's called the Sutton Place. And so I walk into the elevator one day, and there's Tom Green. Okay, not a huge star, but hey, it's Tom Green. And this was, 10 years ago, 15 years ago when he was actually, pretty popular. And then Greg Evigan, if you know who he is, I think, wasn't he on, what show was he on? Was he on The Talking Car? I don't know what movie. If you Google him. But anyway, one day I'm on the elevator, and there's Julie Haggerty, who was the actress in Lost in America with Albert Brooks, who lost all the money, in this famous scene. So, scary fan that I am, it's just me and her on the elevator. So what are the odds of that, right? So I'm like, whenever you meet a celebrity, you always try to make that moment kind of like special for them too. Like, I'm not just going to say, oh my God, I'm your biggest fan, and oh my God, because they hear that a million times. So you even though your moment with them is really probably never going to last in their head more than 5 seconds after they leave you, but your thought process is, I want to make an impression on the celebrity, and they're going to think how cool I am. So there's Julie Haggerty, and I walk in, and I immediately recognize her. And, so I'm trying to play it cool. So the door closes, and I sort of gave her an acknowledgement because you don't want to be fawning or be crazy. And then I just looked at her, and I said, 22, 22, 22. And she looked at me like she could not want to get out of that elevator faster. And she said, oh, yeah. Oh, you like the movie, huh? And, I mean, she was looking at those numbers to say, please let me get off this elevator as soon as I can. I'm like, I'm harmless. I was just trying to be funny. I mean, we had a nice little chat. I mean, before she ran out screaming of the elevator. But before that, I thought this 22 thing would go over well, but I guess it didn't. Anyway, on today's show, we're going to talk a couple of things. This is unbelievable in Chicago sports. We've got the Cubs on the precipice of a hopeful World Series. How many times, not only can you say that, but how many times can you say that and actually believe they have a chance to win? I think it's the first time in 108 years that someone can say that. So let's play that song and get in the mood here. And let's go to the phones and talk to our resident sports guy, Mark Vasko. How you doing, Marco?
Very well, sir. How are you?
You know what's so great about this Go Cubs Go song is, if you recall, this song came out in the mid-'80s as a new Cubs song and was just universally rejected by all Cub fans. Remember that?
I know. I absolutely do.
I mean, this was, Steve Goodman, who was was one of the most popular folk acts. He wrote The City of New Orleans. There's a train they call the City of New Orleans. That's Steve Goodman. And he also was a huge Cub fan. He's from Chicago. And, he actually wrote a very cool song, which you should look up on YouTube, called the, what is it? Isn't it the request of a dying Cub fan or something?
Yeah, the dying Cub fan's last request.
Final request, yeah. Which is a great song. It was written in the mid-'70s when the Cubs were really bad. And he just talks about, the heartbreak of being a Cub fan. So the Cubs hire him to write their theme song. He comes up with this kind of real crowd-pleasing song. They played it. Didn't they play it on WGN?
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
And then, but they stopped pretty soon, didn't they?
Yeah, it didn't last long, but that was in the mid-'80s when the broadcast would start. That's the song that would start it. And
then they got rid of it, and then for some reason they brought it back, 2 or 3? How many years has it been now?
It's been a while. But I like you say, for some reason, hey, hey, holy mackerel was just like too sacred.
Yeah.
They didn't like this one. It's like, okay.
Yeah. But now, everybody, this is the song. They could never change this now.
Oh, I know.
Everybody has the W. In fact, my next door neighbor has the big W flag. It's like, whoa, Cubs.
Hey, we've been waiting a while to have fun with this team. Give us a break.
Oh, hey! Like I said, I've been a Cub fan since I was for as long as I can remember. So I'm definitely there. But I think it's so funny how, it's like everybody is very excited. There's a lot of anticipation. I still think there is that dark cloud of being a Cub fan where they're still very worried. And I am not worried. I have every intention. Here's how confident I am. I am going to be out of town for the first series.
Okay.
Don't even care. Because when I come back, they'll be in the next round.
Exactly. It's not over yet, yeah.
It's the first round.
Yeah, no, I know.
Rip, skip. No big deal. That's how confident I am.
Well, no. Well, again, this team was by far the best team in baseball all year long. You and I, we've talked about run differential. Do you know what the run differential finished?
No, what was it?
Plus 252.
Jeez. It doesn't sound like a lot, but in baseball, that is a lot.
Well, especially, who was second was Washington with 151. So we were first by over 100 runs.
Yeah, I'll tell you. This is just a good team. So now we are recording this before the actual playoffs begin. And at this point, we do not know who the Cubs will be playing. In fact, tonight, when we are recording this, the Mets are playing the Giants. So we are at a disadvantage of not knowing who they will play. But you know what? I don't even want to get into that because, as I said, I believe the first round is inconsequential. They're going to beat I don't even care. And here's how confident I am. Let's not even talk about the National League. I don't want to talk about the National League. So, Mark, what I want to ask you is, who are the Cubs going to play in the World Series? Who should they, put it this way, I'll ask you this way, who do you think they're going to play? And who, as a Cub fan, because you'd like to see them win, who would you like to see them play?
Well, just like you, I honestly don't care. And I'm honestly not worried either way.
Well, good for you. You have seen the light.
I mean, I think, historically speaking, I suppose Boston, just because it's Fenway and Wrigley.
Wouldn't that be an amazing series, the Cubs against the Boston Red Sox? Fenway and Wrigley in the World Series?
So I would kind of like that, just because of that very fact.
Yeah.
But
aren't the Red Sox too good of a team, though? I mean, I want them to win.
Again.
History.
Well, but here's the other thing. The window is just opening. You know what I mean? This team's going to be this good for at least a decade.
Yeah, I know, but we're here. I don't want to think about 2019.
Oh, no.
In 2019, we could talk about how great it's been that we've won 3 in a row. Okay? But let's get the first one. So let's pretend like next year all the Cubs are free agents.
Well,
and they're all going to leave.
I'm protecting my own psyche to the point where even if they get there, that's good enough for this season. Because they haven't even gotten there since.
I understand that, but so you say so. But like from the Reds, so who do you think would be the best if we want the Cubs to win?
Well,
in the American League,
we're taping this right after the night after that crazy Toronto game,
right?
Where the fans threw the beer can and the whole thing. You know what? So I'd like to play them. I'd like them to somehow get there just so we could beat them senseless. Because that's 2 years in a row Toronto fans have done that garbage, and you know what? They deserve just to get humiliated on national television. So from that point, plus I think they'd be an easier team.
I'm just going to say, do you think that they're an easier team?
Yeah, I think they're an easier team for us to beat anyway. So, if they want to sneak on through so we can humiliate them, that's fine.
Uh-huh.
But historically speaking, then it really should be Boston and Chicago just because it's those 2 old ballparks. I'm just unhappy with this 8:00 start. It's like
8:15. Yeah, 8:15.
It's like, come on,
yeah.
Really?
So now, so you don't think that you think that the American League, conference or the finals for the American League will come down to Boston and Toronto?
That's what I want.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
That's what we'll see. I just because I either want them, Toronto, to get close and then lose just to make their fans unhappy, or get all the way to the World Series and just have us sweep them. And
so what do you think? Do you think the Cubs will be playing the Nationals?
I think so. I think so.
So what a great story that is, because that's got Dusty Baker.
Well, right. And again, I think all along those have been the 2 best teams anyway.
Yeah. And it's interesting, too. A lot of people don't know this, but the general manager of the Washington Nationals is from Chicago. He's a Chicago boy. Last name is Rizzo. His last name is Rizzo.
I honestly didn't know that.
Yeah, and his dad used to. And the only reason I know this is because when I played high school baseball, his dad was a scout in this area, and he would come around to our games. And so you knew this guy, you know what I mean? He was looking at young high school players, And so then when I saw, I'm reading stories about the Nationals, and I see this last name Rizzo. And it says he's from Chicago. And I'm saying to myself, I wonder if that's that guy's son.
Wow.
And sure enough, that is his son. That is his son. So
well,
I mean,
I did not know that.
Yeah. So if the
that's cool.
So think about that. Not only do they have Dusty Baker, but the GM is a Chicago. Now I don't know if he was a Sox fan, so he might not care. But if he's a Cub fan, I mean, think about how hard that would be.
Right.
That he's the GM of the team then that kept the Cubs out of the World Series.
Right. Now my question for you is, who's in left field?
Yesterday. Wasn't that it? I know. I don't know who's on third base. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Who's on first? What's on second? I don't know who's on third. I think yesterday was in left field, right?
That's correct.
Well, I'll tell you, that's a good question. It sounds as if they're going to go with Bryant in left, and they're going to put Baez at third.
Well, that's the one I prefer. I think Soler has actually played in left more than anybody. But not that I mind if that happens, but I just want Baez on the field somehow.
Well, I think he has to be, and not only is it interesting to see, how to your point, you want Baez on the field. Do you realize how close they were of trading him over the offseason?
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't that crazy?
Well, and I was fine with it in the offseason.
That's what I mean.
He has come so far after seeing his long swing.
Oh, no kidding.
The first time he came up, I thought, you know what, he's never going to get it.
I mean, he hit those dramatic home runs, but he also struck out 3 million times.
Right. And I thought, you know what, this is a guy, we've got so many prospects. Yeah, it's fine if we trade him. Well, then I give him all the credit in the world because he did change his swing. I didn't think you could do that once
he has really become
to the majors, and he's defensively, he's been so amazing. So he's really been amazing.
Well, think about how no one talks about Starlin Castro.
Oh, no, I know it.
Do you even remember he was on the Cubs?
No, you forget.
I mean, this guy was supposedly going to be one of the core players of the Cubs' future, and they have played so well that you don't even think of Starlin Castro anymore.
Well, because the shortstop that you have is 22 years old.
Yeah, and it's just
and almost knocked in 100 runs.
And how crazy is it that Addison Russell's name is Addison?
Well, right.
I mean, what are the odds of a guy named Addison playing at Wrigley Field, which is on Addison?
And better name his son Clark at some point.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, that's the name of that bad bear, isn't it? That bad mascot.
True. Clark the Cub.
So, I mean, it is crazy, and you and I have been speaking for, I would say, over the last year.
Right, yeah.
And certainly since the beginning, even before the season, about how this is a legitimate Cub. At first, it was funny. We talked about how this is a legitimate Cub team in February and March. And then in April, it was like, hey, this is a good team. And we've just been consistently saying, and like I said, I've been trying to tell people, Cub fans especially, to please embrace this as opposed for waiting for something bad to happen. And I'm actually getting a sense now that after 103 wins, and what the hell was a tie?
Right.
What is this, hockey in the 1970s?
I know.
I mean, a tie? I never heard. I mean, I guess there have been ties before, but I mean, you think about the way they always fight to get these games in when they count.
Right.
And then when they don't, okay, it's raining a little. Okay, go home.
Yeah, never mind.
Tie.
Yeah, never mind. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, after 103 wins, which is crazy when you think that only 2 or 3 years ago they lost 100 games.
Oh, I know.
I mean,
that's what I'm saying. The postseason is the icing on the cake. We've already had the cake, and cake's pretty good.
Yeah, but we need the cake, but we also need the big tower of donuts too. Okay, because the cake is nice.
I get you.
But this. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, this would be amazing. To, as I said a couple of weeks ago, I mean, I've known people, and I'm sure you have too, in your family or friends that had lived literally. My parents lived entire lifetimes without seeing the Cubs win a World Series. That's incredible.
Well, my dad is 91.
Oh,
he's been a Cub fan his entire life.
Oh, please win it for him. What's his name?
Michael? No.
Michael Vasko wants you to win.
He told me the story.
Oh.
He's in the Navy in 1945, the last time we were in the World Series.
With Phil Cavaretta.
Exactly correct. And he's stationed in Pensacola. He's not overseas yet, and the World Series is going on. And he goes into town, and a guy is listening to the Cub game, the World Series, in his car, and this civilian lets him sit in the car and listen to some of a World Series game.
Oh my God!
He's a Cubs fan and wants to listen to some of it in a car for a little bit, on the street in Pensacola in the Navy. So
how crazy!
This is the first time he'll actually get to watch his team, maybe.
Oh, because he could not watch it because he was in the. Oh, wow!
Correct. Yeah. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, and of course they lost in 45, but I mean, this really. I don't know if the city is. I mean, because this season, the thing about this year, unlike other years where the Cubs have either made the playoffs or won the division, is that most of the times those teams that did that in 84, in 89, in 98, they were not expected to win.
No.
At the beginning of the season. So the season itself was magical.
Right. Oh, right.
Because it took you by surprise, and then you got just totally, enamored with this because this came out of nowhere, and suddenly, you're used to a Cub team losing, and you're seeing them win, and they weren't expected to do well, and then you see them win. So it was really kind of like this, oh my God. This season certainly had its moments of magic, but this team has been so consistently good. And you talked about all the runs they've scored. They have outscored, most of the time, by the third inning, the Cubs have won the game.
Right.
It's 7-0 already.
Yeah. And they've got the best defense.
Yeah. So
this rotation.
Yeah. So this season has been fun because you could watch a game and see a win almost, every time.
Exactly.
Or you picked up the paper the next day and you didn't see the game. You said, "Oh, they won again." And so it was cool from that standpoint. But this season, even though it's 103 wins, I don't think this season has had the magical aspect to it yet, because it's been almost wire to wire. Wasn't there just maybe one day they weren't in first place?
Yeah, no, it's all been prelude to this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they went out and got John Lackey.
Exactly.
Because of his playoff experience with Boston and St. Louis.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're so good, he's the number 4 guy in the rotation.
I know.
Tells you all you need to know. And again, they were like, oh, gee, should we move him up because of experience? Well, now think of the matchup. Whatever team they play.
We're going to have a great pitcher against their 4th pitcher.
Lackey against number 4.
Yeah.
And even if they decide, okay, let's bring back number 1 on short rest, well, Lackey against somebody else's number 1, still pretty darn good considering he's played in these huge games already with Boston and St. Louis. And I have no problem with that either.
And the other side of the coin is the Cubs really have 3 number 1 pitchers.
Oh, they really do.
I mean, it's crazy to say this. I mean, you almost stutter when you talk about because the Cubs have, in their history, have never had any pitching of any kind. Aside from Bruce Sutter, who was really the best of the best when he played. And obviously Fergie Jenkins. I mean, they've had their few moments of players like that. But I mean, in terms of an entire staff.
Oh, no, yeah, absolutely.
The Cubs have always had a weak pitching staff and, questionable defense. Always have had fairly good hitting teams. But it's always been pitching and defense that have killed the Cubs in their history. At least in my...
We talked about Wood and Pryor forever because it was just Wood and Pryor. And we were happy because we had 2.
In 50 years.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Of course, there's always Bill Hands.
It was actually very underrated, by the way.
I know, but I just love that name.
I know what you're saying.
Bill Hands and Bert Hooton, who, of course, left the Cubs and became a World Series pitcher.
Well, like Mark Grace, you have to leave the Cubs to win the World Series, hopefully until now.
So your predictions are for the Cubs, like I said. So I actually think that these playoffs are going to capture that magic. Because the season was fun and exciting, but it was almost, as crazy as this sounds, for a Cub fan, it was almost expected. But now we are definitely in a period of the unknown.
Well, yeah, now it's nervous time. I mean,
it is
division a long time ago.
Yeah, so this is a point now where every win, every out, fans are going to literally be hanging on every pitch, and so you're going to see a lot of drama, and I think you're going to see the magic and that euphoric kind of part of the Cubs' former winning seasons that had happened up to this point. But this team has been so good that I think now that's where you're going to see these. If they do well, you're going to see, these players coming through and just the fans really. And my gosh, could you imagine not only if they win the game, the World Series, but if they win it in Wrigley?
It's going to be bedlam.
Oh, it's going to really need the National Guard. The Chicago police on horses are not going to be enough if you live in Wrigleyville, or I don't care if you live in Edgebrook, Sauganash, or even if you live on 35th and Shields. It's still going to be crazy in this city if the Cubs win. And
the entire length of the red line is going to be crazy. So.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, as a Cub fan, I'm very excited, and I'm also very confident to the point where I'm literally leaving the city, missing the first. I will miss the entire series, and I don't care. And Jimmy crack corn, and I don't care.
And I don't care.
Because they are going to win. And that's the way I feel. Now, we have to talk about our Blackhawks because this is going to be an interesting season for the Blackhawks.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I was encouraged last night by the 6-1 win. And 6 goals by 6 different players. That makes me happy because you have to be a little worried about them. But at the same time, who else? It's the same thing because we're Chicago fans. You worry.
We're always waiting for that extra that extra shoe to fall.
But when you think about it, what other teams have this many of this caliber, like Taves and Kane and Keith and Hossa and,
here's the way
Campbell now and Jalmerson and
exactly.
and Crawford. We have some holes, but every team has holes, and not every team has the basic players that we have.
Here's the way that I always look at it. I try, as much as I'm a fan, I love, I've lived in the city my whole life, and I do like the teams. I've been very hard on the Bears for 2 decades because I don't think they've really tried. And my view is to just be a loyal fan and not demand excellence. You're not being a good fan. You have to demand excellence. And the Bear fans, I think, have enabled this team to continue to put mediocre teams on the field now for 3 decades, really, since the last Super Bowl. But with the Blackhawks, what I think, here's the way I look at it from an objective standpoint, even though I am a big fan. You always have to think of, if you didn't live in Chicago, how would you look at your team?
Right. Oh, right. No,
so when I look at for instance, when I look at the Bears' schedule, if I live in any other city, I go, well, there's a win.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. You say, oh, good, we're playing. Oh, thank God we're playing the Bears.
Absolutely, unless you're Detroit.
Yeah, right.
Everybody else.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, once again, beating Detroit doesn't impress me at all.
No.
But my point is, and so that's the way you have to look at it. So if I'm a New York Rangers fan,
right? No, absolutely right.
Or I'm a Washington Capitals fan, I have to look at the other teams, and if I see the Chicago Blackhawks, and in my mind as a hockey fan, as well as a Blackhawks fan, if I put my foot, my head into the world of a Capitals fan, do I say, ooh, I don't want to play the Hawks?
Right.
And if I say that, then I know that they're a good team. And if I don't say that, then I realize that, okay, as much as I want my team to win, we have to realize, like I said, you look at the Cubs this year. Every team, they didn't spank the National League. They spanked the American League too.
Right. Oh yeah. No doubt. No doubt.
What's so funny? Usually what they talk about in baseball is you are going to lose. With 162 games, right?
Right.
Most likely you're going to lose 60. You're going to win 60, and so it's those other games,
right?
Those other 42 games,
right?
That are going to make the difference. It's how you play those other 42, because you're going to win 60, you're going to lose 60, and so it's those other 42 that make the difference. The Cubs didn't even lose 60. They didn't even lose the 60 you're supposed to lose. That's how good they were. But anyway, let's go back to our Blackhawks. So where do you see, I mean, my view on the Hawks is, as you said, you're completely correct. I mean, they still got a great core of players who are still in their prime. I mean, these guys they're not 20 anymore, but right. what they may be losing a little in speed, they've gained in savvy and in wisdom and in experience, which certainly counts too. And they still have, solid goaltending. I think Crawford has always been underrated. And I think he's gotten a bad rap. And I'll be the first guy to admit that I was never a Corey Crawford fan. And I was shocked when they gave him that long-term contract several years ago. But he has really turned out to be a top-notch goalie.
No argument. No, we're very lucky to have him. And again, the defense, they went out and got Campbell. That's huge.
Yeah, it's huge, but that's a Band-Aid,
Well, but
he's 37 years old. I mean, how long is he going to play?
Well, right, but again, for this upcoming season.
Oh yeah, no, for this season. I mean, Stan Bowman has done an incredible job of building on this team that has sadly, because of the salary cap, has lost like 8 All-Stars.
Well, right,
in the last 5 years.
At least he found one to replace some of them with. So that's
but not an all-star in his prime, though. I mean,
no. But again, you do what you can do. And
my fear is that, like I said, the team, the coaching, and certainly the front office have all worked at a high level to bring this franchise back from the depths it was in just 7 or 8 years ago. And have kept that standard of excellence now for the last 5 or 6 years. But I just keep my fingers crossed, because I don't know how many not necessarily great, but how many important players to your team. And that's the way I would phrase it, important players. Andrew Shaw was not a great player, but he was an important player to that team.
Oh, absolutely.
And I just, with the salary cap, having to dump these salaries between Brandon Saad, last year they were just kind of coming around and trying and getting people to fill his hole. And then they lose someone like Shaw, and they've lost Bufflin, and they've lost, so many other players because of this.
All right.
That I just wonder, how many times can you keep losing quality impact players for your team and keep coming back? And, let's face it, we are coming off of a very, a successful season, but a very disappointing playoff season last year. To be knocked out.
What I always bring up about that is, and I've said it to you before, the blessing in disguise there was this team is finally rested. So, because nobody had played more hockey than the Blackhawks. This core logged so much ice time between the Olympics and then going to the finals, just about every year. No one had longer seasons than them with hardly any break. So again, since these guys aren't necessarily young anymore, at least now they should have some fresh legs for this coming season, and I hope that makes a difference.
Yeah, thanks to getting knocked out in the first round by St. Louis. They certainly had an extended summer vacation.
Yes, I'm choosing to look at the silver lining out of that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because especially those, your Canes and your Taves and your Keiths and your Seabrooks, have been playing a lot of hockey over the last 5 or 6 years. Not only between playoffs and Olympics and World Cups and World this and all that other stuff. But I'm just wondering, as a team, in terms of chemistry, which is so important, especially in hockey, and camaraderie and how players work together, and the question is going to be is what is Quenneville going to do in terms of splitting up lines and spreading the wealth, or having just one or two real strong lines. It's going this is I think we can certainly expect the Hawks to make the playoffs, but at the same time, there's a legitimate question mark. Don't you think?
We have to see. Well, no, there's no doubt. The other thing about that is the test is, then what do you do? Well, it's your draft picks. Like we talk about with the Bears all the time. One of the reasons they've been so terrible is their draft picks have been terrible. Well, now it's time for these Blackhawks draft picks. Someone's got to step forward. I mean, we had that Nick Schmaltz, who was the first pick, the 20th overall in 2014. It's like, okay, it's time for you, sir, to step up. We had Ryan Hartman, who was our first pick in 2013, so we're still waiting for him. As a matter of fact, we had the 18th overall in 2011, that Mark O'Neill. We're still waiting for him. So those guys, everybody talks about this Tyler Mott. We picked him in 2013 out of Michigan, and he's he had a great career with the Wolverines. And now it's time for him. So if those any of those young first round picks, come through, that's your answer. If not, well, then we can start looking at the front office and say, look, okay, dealing with the salary cap is one thing, but you got to draft better or whatever. And then now you have to start taking some responsibility, because that's how you refill the stock. The stock is by drafting well.
Well, here's the thing that I find interesting too. Think about when they won their second cup. When they won their second cup, was that the year that they were down to Detroit? Remember, they almost got knocked out of the playoffs.
Yes.
So the year before that, they got knocked out of the playoffs in an early round. And then they were down, 3-1 to Detroit?
You're right. That was the big comeback, right?
And they came back and won that series and wound up winning the cup. Think about if the Hawks had gotten knocked out by Detroit in that first or second round. I can't remember which one it was, but it certainly wasn't the finals.
No.
And having been knocked out the year before, there would have been a good chance that some heads might have rolled.
Right. Oh, yeah, this experiment might not have, yeah.
In terms of Quenneville.
Right. He might not have been given time to do its magic, absolutely.
Yeah, he could have, or one of those guys could have lost their jobs. So what's going to be interesting now is to see if, the way that I think Blackhawk fans are looking at it now is, okay, last year was an anomaly. And you mentioned it, they were tired, and, St. Louis was very scrappy. They had a really good season. You could see, I thought St. Louis was very psyched up for that series.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm surprised the Hawks took it as far as they did, because I thought St. Louis was going to just run right over them, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I kind of thought so, too.
So, but, okay, they get knocked out in the first round, so now we are looking to the bright side and saying, okay, we got to rest, we still got our core players, blah, blah, blah. But if the Hawks do, I think they're definitely going to make the playoffs. But if they get knocked out again, then what happens?
Right.
You know what I mean? Quenneville has been here for a long time. He's got 3 cups under his belt. And I would think that he would be like Walter Alston of the Dodgers, who could be here for 40 years if he wants.
Right.
But in this world, and we know how the Blackhawks ownership and, upper echelons of management, they demand excellence. And, so you never know. Because getting knocked out 2 years in a row in some towns is enough to lose your job.
Well, right. I think we're all willing to cut them some slack because of the success that they've had, and so am I. I'm willing to look at the silver lining. I'm willing to say, hey, at least now we got some rest. But now you need to come through. Absolutely. Otherwise, then there will be some accountability that someone's going to have to take.
What was so great was when the Hawks won that cup, the second cup, they came into the studio when we were on in the afternoon. And so John McDonough came with Jay Blunk, and I think Rocky Wirtz was with them, and they had the cup and they brought it into the studio. So we were not on the air, and and like I said, I always love to find. I'm a reporter at heart. I love the good story. I'm a reporter before I'm a fan. Really, I like the good. Yeah. I like the good story.
And I remember reading you in the Elmhurst Press, my friend. I understand.
Yeah. And even sometimes, like when I'm watching a Bears game, and say they're up by, I'm rooting for the team to tie it up, the other team, because it'll be a good ending, it'll be a good game. I'm not worried about the wins or losses. So I say to John McDonough, who I have great respect for. How can you not? But I brought this up as kind of like an interesting anecdote. Off the air, I said, think about it. You guys were down 3-1 against Detroit. You guys could have been knocked out of this, and you won the cup. To me, that's the great story.
Oh, yeah.
That you guys were down 3-1, and you came back and not only won that series, but came back to win the cup. And he just looked at me and he said, yeah, we don't like to think about it that way, Jim.
They don't want the story.
He's like, I don't want the story. I want the hardware. And I don't blame him. If I'm in that position, I don't care about the drama.
Right.
I want to, if the Cubs have to win 11 games in the playoffs, I want to, if you're Ricketts, you want to be 11-0.
Right.
You don't want any drama here.
Yeah, they're not interested in, Wrigley versus Fenway. They're not interested in any historic Game 7s. They just want the heart.
Exactly. Now, real quickly, I just want to touch upon, as I mentioned, our fumbling Bears.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, they did win, and they beat Detroit. Okay, it's kissing your sister, okay?
Right.
Not impressed. I'm just wondering now, are they at a point they've got to make a decision on Cutler? And I have to wonder, do they have to make a decision once again, like they did after 2 years and got rid of Trestman and Emery? Do they have to make a decision about the coaching and the general manager? Again, 2 years later.
Oh, no question. No question.
I mean, that's legit, right?
Oh, yeah. They're last in the league in scoring. Last. Okay?
I mean,
that doesn't win you many football games. So those decisions that were made to get rid, of your running back, of your tight end, of your wide receiver, all of your playmakers from last year, was like, okay, well, that's all fine and well, but then you didn't go out and replace them. Well, whose fault is that?
Well, I'll tell you.
If you thought you had replaced them, you haven't replaced them because nothing's happening, and then Kevin White's hurt again, your first-round pick who hasn't played well when he's played, and now he's not going to be playing again. I mean, again, decisions, you have to be held accountable, and right now on the field it ain't happening.
And then we have another quarterback controversy. I mean, that's a part of Bears history. I've said this many times, so I won't belabor the point, but I just hope that now, finally, I think the fans, it's taken them 30 years to see finally how bad this organization is run and how bad overall they have been in the last 30 years. And that's all you can say. I know they made the Super Bowl in 2007, okay? But that was a footnote because after the first play of the game, the Bears didn't even belong on that field.
Yeah, they got destroyed. That was embarrassing.
Yeah, and it was embarrassing. So, but I just hope that in my heart of hearts, I mean, you've seen what Ricketts did, and you've seen what the difference in a change in management. I know it's impossible that the Hallis or the McCaskies, do you think there's even a slight chance that the McCaskies would ever sell the Bears?
Oh, of course not.
Because to be honest with you, if as long as that team is in that family, I do not see it ever being a upper echelon NFL team.
Well, it's the Blackhawks all over again.
Yeah, pre-Rocky.
Right, exactly. It took the old man passing away before.
But I don't think. But here's the thing: I don't think that that's even analogous because when Virginia passes away, and my God, she's 170 years old.
Right.
That's not going to change because I don't think that the McCaskey family has a Rocky in their family.
Well, no, I agree with you, but
Rocky changed that team.
They were never going to sell that team either.
No, but my point is that they had a change agent like Rocky,
right,
who put things in place the way they should be. I don't think the McCaskies have that kind of a change agent.
I don't either.
Yeah, I mean Rocky was able to see. I mean, Rocky still speaks very highly of his dad. I'm sure he loves his dad, but he also, I think, saw his dad's flaws in running that team, and he quickly, within a month, changed them all.
Right. So in a sense, we got a new owner.
Yeah.
It was the same last name, but we got a new owner.
And so
the Bears are never going to sell, and they don't have that change agent, like you said.
Yeah, I just it's a shame because it is an historic, legendary, franchise that should never be out of the playoffs. It should be like Green Bay.
Oh, no doubt.
And they look at Green Bay went through some doldrums, in the 70s, just like the Bears did. But they've been consistently good since the Favre era, for the last 15 or 20 years.
Right, because they have a man in charge who knows how to find talent.
Yeah. So it really hurts me because I do love the Bears. This always has been a Bear city. But I'm thinking that if this continues, they are gonna lose that moniker, and to have owned this city for long it was a huge kind of privilege that the fans gave them, and I think they're going to blow it.
No, the apathy is definitely building.
Yeah,
and there was over 4,000 no-shows for that game.
Well, that's what needs to happen, and I've said that before. The Bear fans need to begin to stop going. I know those tickets are expensive. If you've bought them, I understand that, but the ownership has to see empty seats. Only then will they begin to take this seriously, just the way the Cubs did. The Cubs saw empty seats, and that's when Ricketts went and made a complete 180, and that's what has to happen. Well, anyway, thank you so much. As we are here, Cub fans, Marco, keeping our fingers crossed, and I'll hopefully give you a call when we start the World Series.
I'm all for that.
Okay. Mark Vasko, Chicago sports reporter. Always have fun talking to you. Thanks for joining me, Marco. I appreciate it.
22. Julie Haggerty couldn't leave that elevator faster. And welcome back here to Elton Jim Turano's Captain Podtastic here at WGN-Plus.com. A new episode posted every Monday. And I never thought that I would have an emotional reaction to a non-personal event happening. But over the last couple of weeks, I saw this shocking news that one of my favorite New York restaurants is called the Carnegie Deli in New York. And it's one of these places where, if you've ever seen, they have these sandwiches that are probably 10 inches high, just packed with, pastrami or corned beef. It's just this real authentic New York deli. You get there, you're cramped in the chairs, you're sitting next to people, you're real cramped in there. The walls have all these pictures of celebrities on them, and it's right on 7th Avenue, near about 47th, and it's a classic place. It's been around since the 30s. You sit down, they give you the nice pickles when you sit there. Everything is way too expensive. I mean, the sandwich is like $23. It's ridiculous. However, these sandwiches are almost a foot high. They're ridiculous when they come. In fact, one time I'm sitting there. Everything's oversized. The cheesecake is like a brick. Everything is huge. But it's a New York experience, and it is a New York landmark. And sadly, they are closing. And I have a special connection to that in a couple of ways. When I was, about 20 years old, this Woody Allen, I love Woody Allen movies. And Woody Allen put a movie out in 1984 called Broadway Danny Rose. And it was about, Woody Allen played this guy that was like this talent agent for like the worst acts you can think of. He had a blind xylophone player. He had a one-legged tap dancer. He had a woman that played the tops of glasses. I mean, just the worst acts. And then he winds up getting this one guy that starts to get a little popular, and there's this whole little story. But the cool thing about it is because they're telling, the story is being told about this theatrical, showbiz guy, the movie takes place at the beginning. It's they show the outside of the Carnegie Deli. And
they show the Carnegie Deli sign, and then they show a bunch of these comics sitting around the table, just BSing and telling stories. And this one guy goes, I've got the best Danny Rose story. And then that's how the movie unfolds. And they keep flashing back to the deli, and, you know, they're telling the story. So when I'm seeing this, and the movie's in black and white too, so it's even more kind of just like, you know, one of those moments. So I'm like, oh my God. At that point, I had not been to New York. And I'm like, I have to go to New York, and I have to go to the Carnegie Deli. So I finally got to New York, and my first stop was not the Statue of Liberty. It was not the Empire State Building. It was not Central Park. My first stop was the Carnegie Deli for one of those sandwiches, and it was everything I expected. The waiters, what do you have? You know, it's not like at the Bevics, but, you know, it's one of those kind of things. And every time I go there, I just love to go there. As luck would have it, about 18 years ago, I had a weekly radio program here in Chicago, and I had the owner of the Carnegie Deli on my show, and I interviewed him. And as a joke, at the end of the interview, I said, hey, well, now that you've talked to me, you got to put my picture up on the wall. And he goes, hey, you send me a picture, and I'll put it on the wall. So I thought he was joking. But I sent him a picture. I autographed it. I sent it to him. I went to New York about 2 or 3 months later. I went to the Carnegie Deli just to introduce myself to the guy. I said, hey, Sandy, you know, Jim Turano, I interviewed you on the radio in Chicago. He goes, hey, come here for a second. He knew where it was. He walks up and he goes, look at that. Boom. My picture hanging on the wall at the Carnegie Deli. I felt like a kid in a candy store. In fact, if you go on my Facebook page, my wallpaper picture is my picture in the wall of the Carnegie Deli. Sadly, it is closing December 31st, and I literally was depressed. I was physically depressed when I heard this news. I didn't think that I could be depressed about the closing of a restaurant. I mean, we all have our favorite restaurants. We all have our favorite places to go. But I was really depressed because, A, I can't go there every day because I don't go to New York every weekend. So every time I go, it's a special occasion. And now knowing that I won't be there, be able to go there. So I'm trying to plan a trip to New York at least once, if not twice, before December 31st to get my famous Woody Allen sandwich, which is pastrami and corned beef. Carnegie Deli, we will miss you. This is Elton Jim Turano. You are listening to Captain Podtastic. From the end of the web to your screen. I ain't here on business. I'm only here for fun. I hope you had fun. I sure did. We'll talk the next time you click us on.